Yes, so indeed it will, I think, continue on Jarno's presentation about running the DITA-Open toolkit, specifically from the CMS perspective. So I think globally from the CMS, and then part of it is our own DITA CMS solution, because I don't know how the other solution implemented, but I think there's some conceptual information that's common. So Jarno said, in the CMS, you probably want to hide the open toolkit. And the answer to that is yes and no. Your users, you don't want them to see it. You want them, what they want is, I want my output. Your implementer, then they want control over that output. So they want to know what's in there, and they want to be able to control it. And that's one of the great advantage of having the open toolkit, is you can tell them, we provide the CMS, but the transformation is this open format. You can take plugins that exist, you can bring them, you can add your customization. You have a problem developing your customization, there's a whole community to help them. So that's the beauty of the open toolkit. All right, so what do we have? I mean, CMS architecture, overly simplified. We have users working and they're connected to a server. Now, we had the open toolkit. We want to use the open toolkit to transform and generate our outputs. So, do we have all of our users connected to the open toolkit? I would say that's a bad idea. That is definitely not what you want, because the whole idea of a CMS, you have a system that provides that service for everybody. So what you do is you connect the CMS to the open toolkit. So that's the main idea, is that easy as that. Jarno provided a solution maybe with having some OT server that you could install and connect. Now, just to go one level deeper than that, because that may be a little bit too high level for the crowd. How did we actually do it? And then that's where it comes a little bit specific to our solution. We have something called the output generator. That's our own server process, which gets the request from the customer. And that comes to a first level, which is what we call the packager. Basically, at this step, we retrieve the content that needs to be built. And then we come to a second level where we pre-process that content. So we have this ability in this architecture, to add our own preparation steps of the content before you get to the OT. Then we have a connector layer to the OT. Then we go to the OT in a separate box, and that's intentional. Our first implementation, we had the OT within the same environment, so within the same Java virtual machine. That proved not such a good idea. So in our newer implementation, the OT runs as a completely, basically we'll launch a new virtual machine, and your connector points to your transformation types, and it runs in that little box. Then it completes, and the control returns to that conductor layer, where again you can put some post-processing. So whatever the OT delivered to you, you can treat and change again, which delivers the result to the output generator, which then returns it to whoever called this application. So that could be one user that selected output. It could be some sort of automated build system that requests the transformation. The output is returned. And then, because it's a server architecture, we replicate the same processes. So we have multi-thread processing, each with their own little box of DITA-Open toolkit. So each instance of processing basically has its own packager, its own set of content that's put on the file, and then it launches a Java VM and runs the OT in that VM with that content, so it has its own temp folder. Everything is completely isolated from one to another. If one of them goes boom, it's not a problem. The user receives boom, and then user calls the toolsmith system administrator, whatever, says my output didn't work, and then you tell them, well, it works for me. So, so that's the how we use the open toolkit. So actually, the way we use it is much closer to an actual library that we need for transformation. We instantiate it, transform the content, grab the results, and then we do whatever we want with it. Then an actual server we build a server process basically around it. And then we built a UI, I think that touches a little bit on what, or similar to what Drew presented. This was supposed to have some animations, but I obviously lost them on the way. What I wanted to show is we have, oh, there's my animation. Great work. The user selects an output format. So in this case, our PDF. And then we have this ability to say, okay, there are some parameters specific to that output, so provide us those values. So we have a UI on top of these parameters, and then the user selects a different output format, like publish to web, then we have a different set of parameters that corresponds at the low level in the OT to a different set of parameters that in that specific plugin. And that's it. So any questions? I don't know about time, but
we are in time.
Okay.
Yes.
Good. So anyone has any question on
the same as for Yano. A little bit the same as for Yano. I mean, that means that you also work in, first out, and one after one process.
No. That's fully we're fully multi-threaded parallels. So yeah.
Very good. Very good.
Yeah. So all jobs run in parallels.
Just to clarify, I think the question was within the same transformation. You know, like you have a PDF transformation that does go multiple.
In the PDF transformation, yes. Yes. When in that each of these OT box runs is in I guess whatever the OT runs, and then but each box is independent and they can run in parallel.
Not so much a question as a comment that speaking as another CCMS vendor, we do a similar sort of thing. So this appears to be something converging towards the best practice.
A very technical question to which you may not have an answer. When you run the OT, are you running the ANT Java process? I mean, are you running ANT inside a JVM where you control ANT, or are you just spinning up a new command session and calling the ANT executable?
We are, I believe we're launching, I'm not sure the answer to that question. I know it changed between implementation of 1 and for version 2, but I think we launch ANT directly.
Okay.
In that to launch a GVM with ANT, but
okay. Because I implemented OT integration in another CCMS, our suite CMS, and we did it in the context of a workflow engine. So I just made a workflow action handler. An action handler just runs some process. And I tried to integrate the ANT process into the Java so I could control it and do all the good things that Jarno showed us with managing memory. I couldn't make it work, so I just create a command session and call ANT that way. And I'm just curious who else ended up having to do that.
Well, you just exposed my limits.
I wanted to ask about validation. We've been working on a project for a customer where they were using Oxygen to create their DITA, and then we used the Open Toolkit to generate XHTML that we imported then into Drupal. And one of the things that we bumped into was that like there was often a lot of issues with the output, like if there was an image missing or something like that. Do you do any kind of validation after you run the Open Toolkit on your output, or how are you dealing with that?
Well, if a customer wants to implement some validation, they have the ability. either through in that post-processing step in the in our conductors file. So basically, they got the plugin, then they can validate. They could also implement some validation into their processing itself. I think in terms of content validation, the way I've seen it implemented at our customer is more through extending and building on the QA plugin, the formerly known, I think, Citrix QA plugin. So building on that so that they have a validation as its own transformation. So they'll run the validation that will give them a report with all of their rules, and that's what they will use after. But if you want some like validation of your output, it's something you could put in that post-process job to check if it corresponds to whatever your requirements for that output.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much.